and to truly lock off this connection in the Aptos Village project along Granite Way, I can't see. All I see is that now there's a lid, so no one can see what's going on there. And I don't know what it really means to be locked off.
That has been taken care of. It has been locked off and taken care of, and there's been a detailed letter sent to you at our request by the general manager.
What does it mean for a service connection to be locked off?
It means that no one can use it. There's an actual lock on it.
Because it has been buried by soil for months, but they were still using a deep turn-off valve tool.
Been taken care of.
All right, I hope so.
It has.
I really hope
and I
so.
think to assume the worst always is probably not the best policy. I think it's great that you bring stuff up that might need attention, but it's been dealt with, and it's been dealt with well by the staff, and they're on top of it.
Okay, I hope so, because that hasn't been the case since I reported this months ago. They were continued to use it. So I'm hopeful that it has indeed been locked off. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board on an issue not on tonight's agenda? Okay, then we will move to administrative business, which...
Directors?
Sorry, directors. Did I just move a little too fast there?
You did.
Okay, sorry. Rochelle, you have something? Bruce?
A couple of things. I was on a webinar with the Aqua Groundwater Committee, a 4-hour webinar with the meeting of the committee, which happens every quarter. And there were a number of things of interest to us. The DWR has been really involved with this up till now, and they are now switching their efforts from getting this thing all arranged to rather now doing facilitation and providing data, information, help of various kinds, and particularly for the plan that we need to do. And they've got a new website that's come up that's data and tools for doing GSP, the plans that we need to do. One of the things they're doing in relation to that, they've already done it for the southern part of the Central Valley, is doing water budget or balance, and they've done that for that area, and they're now in the process of doing the Central Coast water budget, and so that's going to be done in December, and so that's something we're going to need to look at because it will include our district as well as all the other districts in this area. So that's going on. The other thing that started this time is, in addition to DWR, the State Water Board was present because, as you may know, the plan has been kind of separated in efforts. So the DWR is setting the requirements and that sort of thing, and then the actual regulation of this is the State Water Board. So, for example, they are now taking part with the areas that didn't get claimed. Some of the areas don't have anyone who's claimed them for responsibility, and so the state board has already started that. They're requiring people to put in meters, they're requiring regular reports of how much water gets used, and that will continue. So more and more it's going to be the State Water Board who regulates this versus the DWR. And I think that's all. And I did have a telephone call this week from a sales rep from Oracle. You may know that Oracle is a big database company, largest database company in the world, and they also have some application software, so they were interested in what we were doing, and I referred them to you. I don't know if they called you or not.
They did contact me.
Because they would like to know more about what we do and what our needs are, and I mentioned that we were going to be getting some new utility software, so they have an interest in that.
She's looking into whether or not they currently offer a utility billing program.
Yeah,
and they're going to get back in touch with me.
So, okay, good.
Thank you.
That's all.
Carla?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for approving the Santa Cruz Chamber of Commerce's, the community leadership visit, where we visited 7 cities over the course of 3 days. They were chosen specifically to demonstrate how different approaches to infrastructure development and community building. And so it wasn't explicitly about water, but it was involved plenty of our colleagues from the county planning commission, the planning department, and Santa Cruz City. A number of council members were there, and it was really an opportunity to hear the same information they are. They're both of those departments are entities are really interested in trying to grapple with the problem of affordable housing in this county. And so that was the motivation for this trip. But there are two very important aspects to any kind of possible development, is that is a water supply and transportation infrastructure, which, both of those are problems in Santa Cruz County. So it was good to see some of the people who are involved in our county so that we could actually maybe work with less tension with those guys to make it clear what our water supply issues are. So anyway, I thought it was a worth contact, and I was especially kind of amazed at the energy and creativity and sheer resilience that some of these guys had in staying with a 30-year project, to get something done and turn around these cities, Napa, Santa Rosa, which I don't know if you've driven through Santa Rosa, but it's like a split in half town because of the freeway, 101 freeway. Napa, which had a flooded river, and they managed to work with environmentalists and the Army Corps of Engineers together to restore the river and turn it into this beautiful waterfront, open community space, and with new housing and things like that. But critically, all those cities had resolved, the water issues had been resolved before any of this could take place. So I think it was one of the first things they must have had to deal with. But anyway, thank you.
And thank you, and Ron, for going and continuing to remind them that, water is really important. So thanks. Rochelle, did you say you did have something? Okay, all right. And so before we continue, one of our past board members recently passed away, Gary Hazelton, who served from 1990 to 2003, and when he became county assessor. And so I just wanted to ask for a moment of silence. Thank you, and our thoughts are with the family, and thank him for his service. So now we will move on to administrative items. We have 6.1, the will serve letters. Or
Number 5.1?
no, we have the calendar first. Sorry. 5.1, board planning calendar.
I'll just mention two things about the calendar. In green there on the left, as I scroll up, you can see the water rates advisory committees. They're basically every other Monday, and laid out here. And then also note that the location changes from the district to Community Foundation for a couple instances, just to make everybody aware of that. I know there are a couple members from the advisory committee for an item that's on the agenda tonight. And then also, I wanted to note this item right here. It's the National Water Research Institute panel item, and it's an exciting opportunity on September 20th here in Capitola at these chambers. The day after our next board meeting and the day before the MGA meeting, we'll have that expert panel here, and Melanie's going to share a few words about that.
Just have a couple slides I just wanted to highlight related to this upcoming panel meeting. As you know, the board commissioned the NWRI expert panel to oversee and review the work that's being done on the Pure Water Soquel project and provide recommendations. The panel is charged with meeting 3 times. This is the second meeting. The first meeting they had was just a webinar, and they reviewed the geochem characterization study and the monitoring plan for the CEC water quality study. This second meeting, as Ron mentioned, is going to be held this month, Wednesday, September 20th, with a public portion The panel will be meeting, just the panel, in the afternoon, but from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., the panel will be available here to meet and talk with other project team members about the work that's being done, the studies that Brown and Caldwell and Carollo have been conducting, and will be available to answer questions from the public. So we are going to be outreaching quite a bit on this month. It'll go out into our newsletter tomorrow, and NWRI is going to be publishing it in their newsletter, which I think they said has lots of people, I think 10,000 people on their distribution. We have the item on our calendar as well on the website. So just to highlight, the agenda for the public portion will be presentations by staff of the district, and then from Brown and Caldwell and Carollo to talk about their 2 studies. And then the team of the panel will be asking our consultants some questions, and then they will open it up for questions from the public. So what's unique and what I like about the panel is that they will be providing a written report, and so questions that are asked at the public panel meeting will be the questions and answers will be included in their report. They also always, or typically, keep the window for comments to come in after the meeting, so that if people want to ask a question to these expert panels, they can do that for another week following the panel, and then their panel's responses will also be included into those questions in the report. So that information is here, I put on the slide, but also on our website. And then the meeting will be filmed. We are having it here specifically so it can be filmed. And then the footage would be available on the NWRI website and a link from ours. Just quickly,
One quick thing is just, it looked like it was written comments for the public to submit. They can submit either after or they can submit during, but it's all written.
Right, so the comments, they can provide written either at the meeting, and then what they do is the moderator there, who is the executive director of NWRI, will try and collect the cards and categorize if there's groups of similar comments, and then present those comments to the panel. These 2 slides here are just to familiarize the board and anybody in the public, again, who are on our panel. It is a 6-person panel, and these experts represent different disciplines, specifically to give some insight and expertise of opinions on the project Pure Water Soquel. So just briefly, we have Dr. Chana Rock. She's the chair, and she's a professor at University of Arizona. She really focuses on microbiology and wastewater treatment technologies. Dr. Couture is world-renowned from what we're learning from him, and I just put a little bit of his credentials on there. He was the past director of the Criteria of Standards Division for the EPA. He's worked previously with the World Health Organization and the National Science Foundation, and he has written quite a few papers. Jason Dukakis is the Executive Director of Water Quality and Technical Resources down in Orange County, overseeing the water quality and all of the compliance that they have to do for their Orange County Groundwater Replenishment Project. Dr. Lynn Haber is a professor at the University of Cincinnati. Her level of expertise focuses on toxicology. And Dr. Cara Nelson, she's also a professor at Cal Berkeley. She will also be presenting on water quality regulations related to potable reuse. And then Dr. Thrupp is the hydrogeologist that rounds out the team because his focus really is on groundwater and groundwater modeling. So again, sorry, this is probably a little small, but just to highlight, the charge of the panel is to provide oversight. They're third party. It is an independent group. The NWRI is a nonprofit that is being brought here to kind of review the work that the board has asked them to do. They've done this in many different areas. They also will be looking at the tasks and the activities that our consultants are doing, and give their opinion on it. They've provided some really good feedback and constructive criticism on the geochem analysis work that we will be rolling in, and we foresee that they will continue to do that with the water quality efforts that Carollo is doing. And then again, just as part of the deliverables, we will be getting a final report when the panel is done. They'll be meeting one more time in the late fall, and then we will bring that to the board. That report would include all of the recommendations to the studies, as well as the comments and the responses from the public. And that's it.
Great. Thank you. Anything else on the calendar? Any members of the public have any comment on the calendar? Seeing none, we'll move on. So the next item is the several different will serve letters.
Good evening. There are 3 will serve letters in front of you. The first and the third one are relatively straightforward single-family homes in this area. The middle one is a change of use from an existing nursing home to a proposed residential development. We looked at that development, and the existing use has quite a bit of demand, and the proposed residential use is less than the existing water use, and therefore the water demand offset would not be applicable. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Yes.
I believe that we talked about having one renewal only. Would that apply to the third one? And if so, have they been informed that this is their last renewal?
Yes. Shelley will answer that more detailed question.
Yes, we've been in contact with the applicant, and they're aware that this is their last renewal.
Okay.
They were actually really close to receiving their building permit, but
Yeah,
we told
okay.
them, just to be safe, it's better to just go ahead and renew.
Mhm.
In the event that something happened and you didn't get your building permit in time. So that's where that project is.
Good, thank you. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions from the board? Any public comment on this item?
Well, just on the 6.1.2, I spoke with Shelley about that, but I just wanted to emphasize that it was the difference in the water use between the previous one and the proposed one was over 200%, or it was like
Half of it.
half of it. So it was pretty clear cut.
Good.
So that was the main thing I had a question. I just wanted to make sure it got into the record, because I checked the nursing home capacity and things like that to try to get around figuring out what the actual water use would be in the 2 places. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's the only question I have.
And any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Becky Steinbrunner. I still think you should declare a moratorium, because the seawater continues to come in. I did look at the report that's also included in the packet, and total dissolved solids is increasing coming into Capitola. It's not necessarily chloride, but there's something going on there. And in all honesty, I don't understand how the district can continue to hand out more service connections when our area is in peril and getting worse. I'll be very interested to hear the results of the helicopter studies that was done with the Danish company to really see where that saltwater interface is. But I think that you really need to seriously consider a moratorium until all of this is settled and we do indeed have a reliable secondary supply source that will supply our area. Thank you.
And just to make it clear to the public, no development is done without offsetting their projected use, so as not to make the problem any worse. And in fact, that second one it'll decrease the use. So, all right. Seeing no other comment, any motions or questions? Or
I'm on the wrong.
I'll move approval of all three then. How about a second?
I was looking at the wrong
Put it out
item.
of my mouth, so I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Post.
All right, so now we move on to, I think our rate, is that, yes, proposed rate structure alternative. Good.
So good evening. Tonight, we are going to present the work of our Water Rates Advisory Committee, and we've been working on some ideas for a proposed rate structure alternative. I've got two members of the committee in the audience tonight, Mr. Hans Sherman and Mr. John Dickinson, and they may wish to address the board on this item as well after we finish the presentation. But I just wanted to walk you through kind of our thought process as we evaluated this alternative. So first of all, I want to add the caveat that this is entirely conceptual at this point. Nothing is written in stone. Anything that I'm presenting is still subject to modification by a rate consultant. So it's just theoretical and conceptual at this point. And we focused our efforts in this early stage on our single-family residential customers. We haven't considered how we would expand the program yet to some of our other customer bases, but we do think that there is a good possibility that this could be expanded. So our current rate structure, just to give everybody a little bit of background, is an inclining tiered rate structure. We've got 4 tiers. And the way it's set up now, we recover about 33% of our cost of service on the fixed base charge, which is a flat rate that everybody is charged each month. That rate is currently $29.42. Then we recover about 67% of our cost of services from the variable volumetric charge, and that's the 4 tiers. And as you consume more water, you increase in the tier charge that you incur. So as you can see, we've got a highly variable rate structure on this end, but then when we take a look at our current cost structure, it flips the other way. We have about 97% of our costs are fixed. That means they don't change when our customers use less water. We have about 3% of our costs that are variable, and they do change depending on water use, and that's mainly our the electricity that we use for pumping and the chemicals that we use for water treatment. Other than that, everything else is really not based on the amount of water consumed, but rather on the services that we provide and the number of households that we're serving. So what this does for us is it kind of creates a tension. What happens when our customers decrease their water use, which we have advocated that they do through our conservation programs and our outreach in order to protect our groundwater basin, when they decrease that water use, what happens is those costs essentially remain the same because, as I said, they're 97% fixed, but we get much less revenue that we collect because 67% of our revenue base is based on that variable volumetric charge based on the amount of water consumed. So what happens in that situation as water use decreases, we're pushed to increase our rates in order to remain revenue neutral. So what we did as a committee is we took a look at the standard American Water Works Association rate structures. And there's about 5 categories that they fall into. They have uniform rates, decreasing block rates, increasing block rates, which is what we currently have in place, seasonal rates, and water budget rates. And what we discovered researching these different rate structures is the uniform rate is a constant unit price on all water consumed. So regardless of whether a customer uses 2 units or 20 units, they still they pay the same per unit charge. And it's a very simple rate structure to roll out. It's fairly equitable because all customers are paying the same for their water per unit. And but the disadvantage to it is it sends a much lower conservation signal. There's really no incentive for somebody to reduce their water use. When you get to decreasing block rates, that's really based on economies of scale. If you are in a market where when you produce more water, it costs you less to produce it, a lot of that would be for industrial use, large water users like that. It's moderately simple, but it's much less equitable to smaller households or water-efficient households. It sends a lower signal to conserve, and it really doesn't align with our cost of service model. So then we look at the increasing block rate model, which we currently use, and as you use more water, the per unit cost goes up, and it's moderately simple to implement as well. There is a higher signal to conserve, and it aligns with our cost of service, but it's a highly volatile revenue stream for us, much more variable revenue, and it's a little less equitable for larger households who may be using water efficiently, but because of the size of their household, they're being thrust into the upper tiers. Seasonal rates are higher rates during periods of peak demand. For the district, that would be our summer water use. So what would happen would be we would increase our rates in the summertime and lower our rates in the wintertime. And that's also moderately simple to implement. There is a strong signal to conserve with that because you're really targeting that high peak demand water use. It aligns with our cost of service model, but it's an even higher revenue volatility because so much of your revenue is predicated on that summer water use, which can be highly variable. And it's something that would probably achieve lower customer satisfaction. You'd probably get a little pushback from customers who were unhappy with that plan. So then we took a look at water budget rates, and the district did explore water budget rates back in 2014 as part of our Conservation Plus plan. And this is kind of like the increasing block rates, but what you do is you've got two tiers. One is an efficient use tier, and the next tier is when you exceed that, you would be charged a higher rate. This is a strong signal to conserve. It aligns with our cost of service. It's a little more stable than the increasing blocked rates, but it is more complex and costly to administer, and it is a little bit more intrusive to our customers because we would have to gather all of that demographic data and determine their efficient use threshold and any adjustments to that threshold based on medical need or livestock or hobby farming or whatever. So we'd have to collect a lot more information on our customers to implement something like that. So the Water Rates Advisory Committee was formed in May 2017, and we sent out an application or an invitation to apply to all of our customers via the Santa Cruz Sentinel and our website and our emailed newsletter. And we received 11 responses, and so we started out with 11 district customers that were on the team, and I had one that fell out. So now we're down to 2 members of the board, 10 district customers, and we have about 6 staff members that routinely attend these meetings as well. And we've been meeting about twice a month through most of the summer. And that committee's goals in terms of the rate structure that we're trying to devise would be something that's fair and equitable, it's simple and easy to administer, it's financially sustainable, and it sends a strong conservation message, and it's legal under Prop 218. So with those goals in mind, the Water Rates Advisory Committee has selected a customer select rate model. And this is based on a model that was put out there by UNC Chapel Hill. They did a little bit of work on defining rates that would be water resilient, or rates that would be revenue resilient. And they came up with this model, and we made some modifications to it, but it's essentially a budget-based structure with a few modifications. Rather than assigning our customers a water allotment, what we would do is we would allow them to select their own plan and the flexibility to change that plan as their household needs change. The plan rate would be fixed. You wouldn't be charged a volumetric or variable use charge until you exceeded your plan allotment. So the amount of the bill would remain pretty consistent, especially for customers who are on a fixed income. And this structure aligns much more closely with what the district does. The district is a service-oriented cost structure rather than a commodity-based structure. So what we're really charging our customers for is the cost to provide the service to them. And it's fairly easy to understand and administer from a bookkeeping perspective. So just to give you kind of a sample, taking a look at single-family residential plans, we could offer as many plans as we wanted, but for this conceptual model, we came up with 5 plans. And the allotment in those plans here is based on the water efficient use for a 1-person, 2-person, 4-person, 6-person, or 8-person household. We could add other plans in between to make it more granular if we needed to. And as you go up in plans, what happens is your cost, your fixed monthly charge increases. And I just ran a frequency distribution for our single-family residential accounts just to get an idea of where our consumption lies. And on this graph, you can see all of our single-family residential accounts. The red line is their winter use, and the blue line is their summer use. And as you go out, you can see that they're using more and more water. So a lot of our customers are using lower consumption in the wintertime and higher consumption in the summertime. And those two vertical lines, the red line is where the 95th percentile of our customer base falls, which is right about 9 units of water in the wintertime. About 95% of our customers are using 9 units or less. In the summertime, that 95th percentile pushes up to a little over 15 units, so 95% of our customers are using 15 units of water or less. So that rate structure, those plans we designed actually went up to 16 units, but that's capturing even the peak use of 95% of our customers. Now, as we underwent this development of this plan, we could choose a different threshold for that top tier plan, but that's kind of where we set it right now because that was at the 95th percentile roughly. So if you take a look at the plan distribution under these different plans, plan A, B, C, D, E, in the summertime, you get about 14% of our customers use 2 units or less. In the wintertime, about 26% of our customers use 2 units or less. And as you go up, it's kind of hard to read, but I've given you the percentile. 35% of our customers are using 4 units or less in the summertime, and 58% are using 4 units or less in the wintertime. As you go on up, it shows you exactly how many customers would prospectively be in each plan, but what happens is by the time you get to Plan E, we've actually only got about less than 5% of our customers in the summertime, or 582 customers that would be subject to overage charges, and about 81 customers, or less than 1% in the wintertime, that would be subject to the overage charges, as long as they all stayed within their plans. So the 5 plans we've devised actually cover a considerable portion of our customer base. The conservation incentives we're talking about here a little bit would be a conservation rebate, and this was actually something that was suggested by one of our district customer advisory members, an annual rebate for customers who stayed within their plan for the year. This is highly conceptual at this point, so we haven't figured out exactly how that rebate would work, but we would try and tie it some sort of incentive to pick the lowest plan allotment that your household could live within. So that would be the incentive drive there. We could also tie it to our emergency curtailment or water use curtailment stages by lowering the water allotment in each plan in order to achieve those savings in a water emergency. I also went ahead and ran some numbers on the revenue implications of this, and what I did is I used our current rates as a baseline and assumed a bill for 2 units, 4 units, 8 units, 12 units, and 16 units. And I assumed that those customers that would change seasonally, that they would pick the best plan for themselves in the summer and the best plan for themselves in the winter based on that histogram I showed you. And if they were to do that, every single one of our customers was to change their rate every 6 months to get a winter rate and a summer rate. And we used our current baseline. We have about $12.9 million that this would generate in single-family residential revenue versus what we had budgeted this year at $11.7 million. So it's almost an increase of a little over 10% under this plan using our current rates as opposed to our tiered plan. It doesn't include, my assumption here doesn't include any overage charges, and it assumes those customers are all changing their plan twice a year, which probably isn't likely. I know for myself, once I set my cell phone plan, I don't typically go in and change it. Some people may want to do that, but a large percentage of the population probably won't choose to do that. So the revenue looks a little more stable under this plan than it does the other. So what we're doing tonight is we're presenting this conceptual plan to the board and asking them whether or not they would like us to continue to pursue it further. If the board likes this plan and wants us to delve a little further into the details, what we would do would be to hire a consultant to evaluate whether this structure meets all of the legal requirements of Prop 218, because that's the first thing we want to make sure we're covering. And then we would need to look for a utility billing software solution that would allow us to bill these rates, and that process is already underway. Then we would prepare an RFP for a financial plan and rate study for somebody to do that within the next year. The Water Rates Advisory Committee, if we wish to proceed, will go ahead and refine the conservation rebate concept. That needs to be fleshed out in a little more detail. And then determine how the rate structure could be expanded to include our other customer types. And then we would also start addressing some of the issues around education and outreach to our customer base on how we would message this type of plan. So tonight we're looking for board feedback and are here to answer any questions and to ask if you would like us to continue to pursue this avenue.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public that have a question, a comment on this particular item?
Go ahead, you're part of the rate advisory. You should go first.
John.
This is Mr. John Dickinson of our Water Rates Advisory Committee.
Hi there. This was a really fun project because it was much more interesting than I thought it was going to be. The goals got really simple really fast. I think it was at our first meeting, a retired gentleman said, I just want to know what my bill's going to be next month. I want it to be the same as this month. And that kind of led us on a track to looking at a completely fixed model, which of course turns out to be very problematic of its own right. But what really came out of that was the idea of doing something revolutionary, which is to build a rate structure that ratepayers could actually understand and also have some control over. And that's how we came up with this more or less fixed block model. I don't know how you want, what do we call it? The
Customer select.
Customer select model. And one model that Leslie mentioned briefly was, cell phone plans kind of look like this. You buy 86 minutes or whatever it is, and you pay so much for that, and then if you go over, you pay more. People understand that. And they seem to be able to get that, and they have a little bit of consultation with the person at the AT&T store or whatever, and they figure out what rate plan is going to work for them, and then they do that. And we talked it over with staff and said, is that going to work for you? And they thought it was pretty simple to do. When it comes to conservation signals, the dividend thing was a late development, but early on, it occurred to us that in the current situation, if you look at your water bill over a period of time, your bill is, $90, $110, $120, $75, and it sort of wanders back and forth, and you don't really get a very strong conservation signal. But if you agree that you're going to pay $100 a month for your water allotment, and all of a sudden somebody turns on the garden sprinkler in a big way, and your bill is $150, wow, that's a strong signal. Much stronger than what we can offer now, and I think even stronger than the dividend. So it has a couple of really nice characteristics. It also has, for the district, it has predictable revenue for you, as well as predictable cost for the ratepayer. So I kind of like it. I think it's interesting, and I think, I don't know what it's going to do with Prop 218. I really don't know, but sounds like it might work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and for your service. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
This is Mr. Hans Sherman, also on the advisory committee.
This has been a real education for me. I'm recently retired. I've been retired almost 3 years. And one of the things that you really look at when you're retired is keeping the budget very even keel, and you want to see that all the bills that you're receiving are predictable. And we all know that, you know, that all of our gas bills and water bills and cell phone bills and those type of things constantly increase. And that's why I find that this plan is an extremely attractive plan for me, and I think it would be for the community. It's very simple. I think the general public could understand it very easily. I think it's also very equitable. It lets you choose the plan, which is also a great advantage. And it also has an incentive to conserve. And I think all of us in this room try to conserve water as well as other resources that we have. And for that reason, I think that it's something that's very positive and that the board should really consider.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. Becky Steinbruner, I see you're starting the clock for me. Thank you.
Well, you're a member of the public. They were members of the committee, that's why.
Oh, okay. All right. I just want to say that the slides that were presented were not in the packet, and I'd like to be able to review those more carefully. So if those can be put up on the district website, that would be great.
They'll become part of the minutes, I believe.
Okay, thank you. It would be nice to have had them in the packet. And I also want to point out, was this committee advertised in the What's on Tap? It goes out in the email, but a lot of people do not have computers. A lot of people, you may be surprised, do not subscribe to email. Putting it out in their mailed statements and the What's on Tap that everybody gets, everybody opens, and probably a lot more people look at, I think would be a good suggestion for next time something like this happens. I think you'll get a greater, cast a greater net. So I'd like to suggest that. But I enjoyed, I'm not a ratepayer, but I was interested in the process and was able to just sit in on the last two. And I was happy to see Assistant County Planning Director Wanda Williams there. That was great to see her as part of the committee, because there is a real disconnect between water and land use. I want to just say that already the districts, according to your draft budget information put out, your rates are already second highest in the state, and certainly the highest in our area. And I want to just ask why, if the issue is that you don't have enough, the district does not have enough money for fixed costs, why don't you increase the fixed rates that you charge everybody? That seems more equitable and a more sure level of revenue. My sense is it probably has to go to a Prop 218 vote. I don't know. But why isn't the district discussing that instead of focusing everything on this very nebulous volumetric use, when what it seems like is that everybody needs to pay to keep the system going, and that's a fixed rate. So it seems like looking at the fixed rate costs need to be looked at. And I will also say that at the last meeting, your conservation manager, Ms. Flock, expressed her great reservations about the financial reality of promising these rebates to people who do conserve. And I want you to really take a look at that and not promise people something that you really can't stand behind and come through with. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other public comment, then see if the board has any questions or comments. Bruce?
Some of the things I'd like to mention about this, it's been mentioned that it's kind of like a cell phone plan, but also PG&E has a number of plans too. Most folks may not know that, but they do. And if you go to their website, they can actually use 2 years of your past PG&E data to tell you which plan would be the cheapest for you if you had continuing usage like that. And we could do the same sort of thing with us. So when we start this thing, we can actually tell customers, if you pick Plan C, that would be the cheapest for you, given your past history. So that'll help them a lot. And then, we could continue to do that. So in the future, if their situation changes, they get 27 kids who show up, or they get whatever, they can then rerun that and see how things are changed and adjust to it. So that really simplifies things for people, to be able to have that support. And it's real easy to do. Essentially, you'd take those 2 years of data and run it for Plan A, see what the cost is, run it for Plan B, see what the cost is, run it for Plan C, and so forth, and then take the one which gives you the minimum cost. Because that could then, it's not just a case of the actual, the tiers, but it's also the question of, for example, if you use 2.1 units every month, it might actually cheaper for you to go with Plan A and pay the overage for that 0.1 unit than to go with Plan B, which is 4 units. So this could accommodate the entire complexity, the overage and the savings and the entire thing. Because, that would really help people to actually know what their plan would have given them. So I think that's an important thing. What else was I going to talk about? Well, I'll think of it later, I'm sure.
I have a question. I just wondered if you had happened to more conversationally run this by any of the typical rate consultants that we've had to see if they've ever run across anything like this.
I haven't yet discussed it with a rate consultant.
Okay, just wondered.
But no one that has been involved with this knows of any district that's done it. So
Right, I know that.
that is going to be one of the challenges. We will have to get a consultant who doesn't do the rote thing of turn the crank and out pops the solution. It's going to be someone who can sit down and analyze things from first principles. So that will be a challenge in getting this to work.
Question?
I had a question.
Yeah.
I have had some experience getting some grants and other kinds of help from the state, and it's my understanding that they require that you meter. And there's a reason for it, because they want us to conserve. So I guess there's a balance with, I just want, because of the question that was asked about, fixed, you have to have some metered charges in order to, I think, to get some of the grants that you get or loans from the state. And you may want to look at that.
And this would continue to be metered.
Mm-hmm.
We would meter their consumption. This would just be established, and they would be self-selecting a water budget, and they would be charged a per meter charge in excess of their budget.
I just wanted that to be out there, since there was a suggestion that everybody pay the same amount.
Yeah, the challenge with everybody paying a fixed charge is it's not very equitable to smaller households or a very water efficient household. That's not a very equitable rate structure for them. And the other issue we run into is there's really not much of an incentive to conserve under just a fixed, if everybody just paid $100 a month for their water bill.
Let the hose run.
Yeah, and I don't think it fits with the Prop 218 requirements either.
But Director Lather, you're correct. We have to have a rate structure that somewhat promotes conservation. Otherwise, we won't be eligible for grants. That's one of the criteria.
I just wanted that out there, since there was this comment about fixed being what everybody pays.
Yeah, I think this is a kind of an opportune time to rethink, think outside of the box on our water rates and our bill paying. I think Santa Cruz chose one approach that is completely different than what this district had been doing. And I even spoke to someone at one of the water meetings, actually John Weed. He said that Newport Beach out in Southern California, they actually experimented with taking all the service charges and making it part of a wastewater tax bill. And that's a pretty Herculean effort to do under the current Prop 218 regulations, but it just showed, to me, it showed people were really searching for the ideal between conservation and equity. And I think this is an approach, the first pass might not work, might need tweaking subsequently, but I think it's definitely something to explore right now, and I think it's a good time to do it.
One thing, I just also wanted to compliment the group for being willing to look at something different, and I think we have to wait for an actual, water rate consultant, and we have to wait for legal advice to see if it meets Prop 218. But I think, in my own opinion, it surely, we can't just look at this. We have to look at, another alternative as well, where there are tiered rates, which is what's proposed. But I think, to me, this is a novel approach that, I always like when customers get to make their choice, and if that works for the district and can work for them, sure, a lot better than having to figure out how many people are there and be intrusive, and I don't know, I just like that whole thing better. So kudos to the group. Bruce, you had something?
Well, yeah, I was going to mention that we've been looking at this per person sort of thing, and got into the difficulty. You'd have to know how many people live in each house, and of course then it was brought up to us that people come and go, and we even had some suggestions that, oh well, I sometimes have visitors at Christmas, so for December I'd like to fiddle with it. And one of the things that we did talk about was the ability for people to change their plan. We don't want that to go willy-nilly though, so we talked about having one free one a year, and then any more. If you wanted to do it every month, fine, but you would pay a service charge, the expense of doing that for the district, the other 11 months, if you wanted to change it every month. So that's another thing. And I'd like to say that as well, there's a lot of details still to be worked out. I mean, this plan here was kind of just put together about how many units are in each plan, what the cost is per each plan, and there's a tension here. You could make the thing be strictly linear, but that then doesn't give much of a conservation signal, because you could pick Plan E, and you're not paying any more than someone playing Plan E and A, or the same cost per gallon. And you'd like to have it somewhat inclined to give the conservation signal, but if you get it too inclined, then some people are just getting ripped off. And so picking the overage amount, picking the rebate amount, and when it applies. So there's a lot of details that are important to make this thing work here. For example, if you look at this plan, Plan E is $100 less for someone using 16 units than our current rate plan. And I think that's something we probably wouldn't want. With our current rate plan, if you use 16 units a month, it would be $277 or something. And with this, it's $180. So that's a big difference, and that may not be fair to give that much water, but again, you're talking about some of our customers are there, and big families and so forth. So there's this tension anyway. So it has to be worked out with great subtlety to make this thing really.
Right. But I think as our mission today is just to say whether we like the concept,
right,
to move forward to get those details.
And there's a lot of knobs we can twist to get the thing, right, hopefully to have many of the benefits that we're looking for. So I think there's a lot of potential.
And Carla?
Oh, I just wanted to, I think it was understood by the committee that there's a lot of filling in to do on this whole thing. These numbers that are represented in the graph, what number is, well, it doesn't have a number, but they are just representations for the process of trying to think through repercussions. And so I just wondered if you would speak about the timeline, or how much time we really have.
Sure. Our current rate structure that we have in place, or our rate timeline, is we have one more rate increase that's scheduled to go into effect January 1st, 2018. And that will be the last rate increase we had devised under our last rate plan. So that rate will remain in place until we enact a new rate plan. If we wanted to keep with that yearly schedule, then we would need to be prepared to send out a Prop 218 probably around the October timeframe next year. But that's, if we need more time to flesh out a plan, then we would simply keep the rates we have past the first of the year and have a rate plan take effect a little later in the year. But we do have a little over a year before Prop 218 would need to go out if we wanted to stay on that current timeline of adopting a new rate at the beginning of each calendar year.
President Liu,
Yes.
just further to what Director Lather said, clearly you could not have a flat rate under Prop 218 because it doesn't reflect the cost of service. So somebody who used 100 units would end up paying the same amount as somebody who did 10 units, and clearly there's a higher cost of service.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't know if you want us to vote or you just by consensus. If I was to make a motion, I will then, just because I think it's clear for you guys that you proceed with evaluating this proposal along with the standard tiered rate
Okay.
proposal.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously, and thanks again for committee members, both from the public and from the board and from staff, so good work. All right, we'll move on to item 6.3. This is a good news termination of an agreement.
Right. So for the past 5 years, the district has been monitoring for impacts related to the well master plan wells, and this specific item is related to the Polo Grounds well, which was the first well master plan well that was installed to move pumping inland. And specifically, this agreement is with Central Water District, who has production wells in the vicinity of the Polo Grounds well, and they actually came to us saying, I think we don't need to do this anymore. We're not seeing any impacts. You know, every year we give them a report and nobody sees any impacts. So they're proposing that this be terminated, and their board has already taken action to do so, and so now it is in front of our board to, if you agree, terminate that monitoring.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this item?
Becky Steinbrenner. I give a lot of elderly people rides to different things that they can't get to on their own, and I have friends that are customers of Central Water District, so sometimes I take them to these board meetings, and I happened to be at the last Central Water District board meeting when they did discuss this. And I really want to give some public recognition to General Manager Ralph Bracamonte from Central Water District for coming to Soquel Creek and saying, you know, we don't need to do this anymore. It's costing Soquel Creek Water District money unnecessarily, and I really want to give him some public recognition for doing that to save your district money. Thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing no other public comment, any?
Are we willing to make the motion?
Okay,
I'll be happy to second.
moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Good deal. So we move on to item 6.4.
Yes, this is an informational item. You can provide direction if you like, but at the last board meeting, it was asked that we bring back the groundwater report. This was traditionally presented to this board as a primary focus outlet to inform the community. However, that has shifted to the Mid-County Groundwater Agency, so that was presented to them at their last board meeting, and bringing it back now so to make sure all our board members and other community members also see it. So the report's quite long. It's linked in the memo, and I've attached the executive summary, which we can go through. But just in a nutshell, you know, we're still in long-term overdraft. There's no question about that, and thus seawater intrusion continues. However, due to the diligent conservation from our customers, the basin has shown some improvement. In fact, it's probably the best we've seen it since we started monitoring at the coastal, along the coast, meaning that 8 of the 13 coastal monitoring wells now have water levels in them that can prevent further seawater intrusion. However, the other 5 still have water levels that are below being protective of preventing seawater intrusion. And I'd also like to just mention, we shouldn't forget that those protective levels were based on a 70% confidence level. So even at that scenario, it's only at 70% confidence that further seawater intrusion would happen. If we wanted higher confidence, then less wells would be at a protective levels, what that means. Don't want to get too complicated. But here's a couple pictures that are in the executive summary that we've shown you, and I'll give you about 45 minutes to study this, and then you can say you can't figure it out. That's a joke. This actually contains a lot of information. I'm going to give it to you simply. Yellow, when you see yellow, it's not good. It means that location represents a monitoring well is below protective water levels. When you see green on top, that means they have exceeded protective water levels. So you can see there's 5 locations there that water levels are below protective water levels, protective of preventing seawater intrusion at a 70% confidence level. Then figure 2, let's see, shows groundwater trends in the different aquifers. So over there on the right, the different colors and shapes represent different aquifer levels. But what you want to look at here is basically squares are bad, and the bigger the square, the worse it is, and circles are good, and the bigger the circle, the better it is. So a square would show a negative trending water level, a circle would show a positive trending water level. And you can see a big, in the middle of the district, you can see a big circle. And Taj, if I'm not mistaken, that's where you've controlled some of the pumping. Matter of fact, lowered it so you would expect water levels to come up. So it just reinforces the plan that, and the EIR that the board invoked several years ago of moving some of those wells inland, some of the production wells, because that gives a chance for the water levels near the coast to rise a little bit more.
And that's a good thing, because that was the worst area we had.
Yes.
In some places, it was 70 feet below sea level,
Yeah.
so I'm glad to see that that work is done, so I want to thank staff for that.
Right, and a lot of production wells in that area, so it's doomsday scenario if you mess it up. So, and then this last figure, there's 2 of them, and I'll just go to this one, but total dissolved solids or chlorides, I kind of think of them as reflecting the same thing. They both are really indicating seawater intrusion to some degree. And in this graph or picture, the yellow is bad. You can see that chloride levels are numerous times above what's considered appropriate, or thus showing seawater intrusion. And then over here on the far side toward Pleasure Point is also a dot indicating seawater intrusion. So that's the end of the presentation. I'd be glad to answer questions. I know formally that the board asked not to have the hydrologist here last time, just kind of a tabletop.
Okay. Yes, please.
I have some comments to make. Maybe we should wait till after the public does this.
Yeah, I was just going to see if anybody from the public wanted to comment on this item. I have one comment.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrunner. When I looked at the main report, I saw that there was an increase in total dissolved solids moving in through the Capitola area. I'm not seeing it in these graphs now, but maybe staff can comment on that. And also, I did note in this report on page 43 that total dissolved solids and chloride concentrations in one of the City of Santa Cruz's monitoring wells indicate seawater intrusion in the westernmost Purisma area. But concentration in the Soquel medium seem to be decreasing. I'd like an explanation of that, if it's possible. Thank you.
Okay. Bruce?
Okay, it's figure 2 that you showed earlier. And there are a couple things that concern me. and it's about the inland wells that are there. So what you want is, you want a nice gradient going from inland out into the ocean. That's what keeps the salt water. And you see that Thurber Lane, over there on the left, is down 2.7 feet. And SC20 is down 3.2 feet, and Black is down 2.5. So essentially what's happening is, instead of like this, the top of it is flattening out. And that means, that means that you're no longer getting flow going downhill towards the production wells that we care about. And that's a bad precursor to perhaps future problems. And so that needs to be continued to look at. I'm not quite sure why that would be happening inland like that, but maybe the drought signal is finally reaching those wells, and will continue on down the hill. But the fact that those, we don't see that through that middle section there, which is good, because that's what we're trying to really protect. The other thing that's kind of confusing is way over at the right-hand side, SCA7, it's down 3.5 feet. And that's the area that we've abandoned pumping. We don't use either of those wells in La Selva. And yet there's been a big reduction. So I'm not sure why that's happening. Maybe it's some of the ag that's in the area, or I don't know, but that also needs to be continued to look at.
We're aware of both those situations.
Sure.
I think we have a little bit of understanding, but
Okay.
trying to gain more.
I just wanted to make a brief point that, in the executive summary, it mentions that, we're going to need to reevaluate the established protective levels. And so those will be, it's a little bit of a moving target. This is the best we have for now, but just to be aware.
Right, and if I may add to that, that's a great point, because really the way that should proceed, it's kind of an MGA, it's in their ball court, but if this board could inform, your two representatives, President LaHue and Director Jaffe, we can bring that back as an item if you like at some point for discussion here.
Well, when we've got some recommendations for what those new ones are, yeah.
Great.
Anybody else?
Well, like, with this, yeah, I have a question. Would these the uncertainty be a little bit ameliorated if we had the model, the Oxford model that's being generated?
I think it'll help, because it'll help show if we're pumping somewhere, should that water level respond in a corresponding manner. So this helps inform that, and more so that helps inform the model to a large degree. So
Well, yeah, because it's a data point, but then in terms of explaining what that is are these points on ES2 a delayed response to the drought? The prolonged drought, because we've had just 1 year of recharge. That was last year.
Well, I think it's a combination of things. The drought I think of as, especially as you go deeper, it's more delayed because you've got layers slowing it down. So instead of seeing a response like this, you may see this, flattened out response, a hump over time. What we didn't bring in, but Taj and his team have been doing some good work with the data, and so like this rise right here, you can see it directly proportional to lower the pumping. It's almost like, oh, there it is. We see that. So we know what we're doing. Over here, there might be other reasons that we're investigating why that's going on. I think we have a handle, but we need to look at a little bit more. But that kind of information, if we know what those pumping rates are and they put it into the model and it starts to reflect that reality, that's what gives us better confidence. And the TAC, the Technical Advisory Team committee's all over that, trying to.
But we've always had some things occur that we just can't explain. Like the same well, you'll get the dissolved solids going up, and you get chloride going down, and that doesn't make much sense at all. And it clearly is what we've observed. Could be a problem with our observations, but no model is going to come and fix that, because it just doesn't seem to happen in reality.
Right. And there's it's subsurface, it's geology. We don't see everything, so the model has to do the best it can with what we know.
Go with the preponderance of data.
In fact, one of the things that's been added is there's a new fault that's been hypothesized
somewhere
in
right
there.
And you can see that's demonstrated by the water levels.
Yes.
Yeah,
They mound up behind it and then drop
right.
on it, because it's like a dam, the fault. So,
Okay, good.
Okay.
Move on to item 6.5, the Aqua Region 5 election.
so that, yeah, get us to the next time. Okay. Great. So Soquel Creek is located in Region 5 of Aqua, and the region board members are elected to represent the issues of each of the 10 regions. So what's in front of you is a ballot as to how you want to vote for your Aqua Region 5 representatives. And there's I think we go to the ballot, there's two gross options, if you will. One is their recommended slate, which is up top, and then you can go individual if you want down there. And I believe you know some of the people on the slate there.
Only one.
So who came up with the slate?
I don't know who's on the nominating committee.
I don't know this year. Typically, they have a couple of managers from water districts in Region 5, and they basically come up with a slate. I know at one time in the past, when Laura Brown was a manager here, she and Jill, I can't think of Jill's last name, from the
Now Zone 7.
Zone 7,
Right.
were the two
Right.
two members of the committee.
Yeah, we didn't have any input this year.
And then, how did the individual nominations get there?
People put their name in.
Right.
There's some that are perpetual. There's one that's always on there every time.
Oh, okay.
And as you noticed, there's at the end in correspondence, one of these members sent out a solicitation.
Right.
Bill Rosen.
Bill
they'll often
Rosen
do
did.
that.
Yeah, for several years, Rosen and Hodgen have been going back and forth between the president and vice president, and then they both end up serving. The president ends up serving on the Aqua board.
So I had a question too. So like on the slate, it has Dave Hodgen as vice chair, but he's also under board member. So if he gets vice chair, then he doesn't, I mean, can you?
Well,
you know,
that's up here, he's under vice chair, I believe. And then if you didn't want him, when you get down here in this selection thing, if you didn't choose him here,
Right.
then you could choose him there. I think.
Well,
that's-
you could actually choose him both places.
Oh, you could? Okay, I guess you could, yeah.
In case he doesn't make it here, your vote could we go for him down there, so you could do that.
Okay, any guidance?
I think the chair and vice chair folks are pretty competent, so I think either of them are good. I don't know most of the other members.
So were you good with the slate then?
I'm good with the slate.
Anybody else? Other opinions?
I was just out of contrariness, I was thinking we should go individual and change the director and with the vice chair and the chair up a little bit.
I don't know the
Introduce
other
a new
person.
person into it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about John Weed.
He's been on the board, and I don't know. I agree. No.
There must be a reason why they don't have him on there as a slate, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to be
Yeah.
different might not be enough of a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen him in action, and he's not as impressive as I'd like to see. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's helpful. So, any motions?
I move we do the nominating committee's recommendation.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Last regular item would be item 6.6, and I think Tracy, you're on for that.
Yeah, good evening. As the board knows, we've been negotiating this year with our various employee groups. We have 3. We settled with our SEIU represented group earlier this year, and we've been negotiating with our mid-management, it's an unrepresented group, this summer. Their MOU, their labor agreement expired on July 31st, and so I'm presenting to the board tonight the tentative agreement and recommending ratification of the tentative agreement that the district and the mid-management employee group has signed. The proposed term of the agreement is 4 years, terminating on July 31st, 2021. In the memo presented in the packet, I've detailed some items in the economic package. Those include taking a look at the cost of living allowance and actually looking at a change in the base of the cost of living allowance. Right now, our spread for cost of living allowance is 0 at the base and 5% at the top end of our CPI index. The district has traditionally used the October CPI index, a consumer price index for the Bay Area, San Francisco area. The tentative agreement aligned to change that base to a 0.5% and capped out at 4.5%. And looking at that cost of living agreement on an annual basis, the COLA on an annual basis through each year in the term of the agreement. It's difficult to determine what that cost to the district specifically will be because that's based on the CPI. The CPI this year is running kind of an average right now at about 3.5%, a little bit higher than the average from last year, but we did land on a 3.6% last October, so I kind of expect that to be about the same this year, in case anyone was interested in that. It wasn't included in the memo. The second item in the economic package, the mid-management group was interested in increasing their life insurance policy. We have 9 employees in the mid-management group. Currently, the base plan, the district paid plan, is a $20,000 policy, and they were interested in increasing that to a 1 times salary or $150,000 maximum. The tentative agreement also included adding 2 days of paid bereavement leave annually. Their MOU does not currently have any district paid bereavement leave. They usually have to take some leave bank from their own accruals, and so this would add some district bereavement leave. There also is an expanding use of paid sick leave to cover a broader spectrum of personal and family care needs and reasons, and the expansion really aligned with some of the terms that were set forth in the California Healthy Families and Healthy Workplace Act of 2014. The same language was changed back in 2014 with the managers group and in the recent SEIU agreement. And we also wanted to memorialize the Employee Assistance Program, the EAP benefit that was provided to all district staff back in 2015, and so we wanted to include that as a cost item since it had been a benefit that was provided outside of our negotiated agreement, but it's a really important benefit for our employees. The estimated annual economic impact to the district, and that's excluding the COLA because it's unknown at this time, is approximately just a little over $9,000, and that figure is roughly about 1.07% of the total budgeted salary for that mid-management employee group, in alignment with what we did with our SEIU economic package as well. And then there were some additional language changes, as you can see from the details of the non-economic revisions. We did a lot of cleanup with this MOU as well through the course of our negotiations process. As you recall from our SEIU agreement, we actually made some changes to restructure some articles so that it was much more easy to navigate both for supervisors as well as employees trying to get information out of their labor agreement. And so those are itemized in the non-economic revisions. The mid-management employee group ratified their agreement. They had a unanimous vote and ratified their agreement on August 23rd. And if the board makes a motion and ratifies the agreement as recommended, at the next regular board meeting, the complete terms of the agreement will be presented in a fully executed document. And so I have by motion recommendation to adopt a resolution which would ratify the tentative agreement between Soquel Creek Water District and our mid-management employee group.
Okay. Can I do public first? Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I do have a question because I've been doing a little bit of research about different agencies, government agencies, and their funding levels for their employee pensions, and I'm curious about where Soquel Creek Water District stands with this. And also, I'm curious if you can provide the name of the steward for the SEIU group that you work with. I would be interested in knowing that person if you're able to provide that.
This is not the SEIU group.
Oh, I heard
This
you
is an
say
unrepresented mid-management group.
Oh, I understand. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So how is
And,
that different?
the
We're not gonna get
information-
into back and forth. Go ahead and make your comments.
okay.
Sorry.
So it's not union?
Correct.
That's right.
All right, thank you. I wasn't clear on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bruce.
You mentioned down at the bottom that the estimated economic impact is 9,233, and I don't see that from the things up there. How does that come about? Because I see the life insurance is like 2450, and one of them is cost neutral, and then the other one's 254, and I don't see where 9,000 comes from.
What you don't see is the estimated cost of bereavement leave.
Okay.
That was equated to and that is one of those items where if you take it, then it would bring the cost to that estimated cost, because it's based on the employee salary. They would be paid they would be paid at their rate at that time. So that's
a
roughly
cost of about $6,000.
Yeah, roughly what it works out to is a 0.77% if everyone took 2 days of bereavement leave at district cost.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's the maximum.
Correct, that's the maximum.
Other questions or? Okay.
Well, I'd move approval.
I'll second.
Might
Go
as well
ahead.
get in there.
And this will be a roll call vote.
Director Lather,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Christensen, and
Yes.
President LaHue.
Yes. Okay, so now the next things were written communications that we were able to read.
Closed session.
Okay. So then we will adjourn to a closed session. Thank you.